You train techniques until they are automatic. But in a real fight, your body freezes. That's not a technique problem, it's a processing problem. Most martial artists train with a blind spot. You focus on physical technique, how to throw a punch, execute a block, or escape a grab. But your brain processes combat information in 3 stages: intake, decision, and execution. Traditional training only addresses the 3rd stage. When you drill a specific response to a specific attack, you train your brain to handle one thing at a time. Real combat doesn't work that way. Attacks come in flurries, feints, and combinations. Your opponent throws a jab, crosses with a hook, then kicks. Your brain, wired for sequential processing, tries to handle each movement one at a time. That creates cognitive overload. You have more information coming in than you can process. The result? Your body doesn't respond, or it responds with the wrong action. Let me break down the 3 stages of combat processing. Stage 1 is information intake. You see and recognize what's happening. Stage 2 is decision-making. You choose the appropriate response. Stage 3 is execution. You physically perform the technique. Most systems train only Stage 3. You drill the block, the counter, the takedown. But if Stage 1 or 2 breaks down, your perfect technique never activates. Under stress, your brain struggles to recognize threats quickly. You see movement, but you don't identify the attack. Or you identify it, but you can't decide which response fits. That delay between observation and action is the processing gap. You experience it as slow motion. You see everything, but your reactions lag behind. The technique you drilled 1,000 times sits unused because your brain never got to Stage 3. When your processing fails, you see specific outcomes. The freeze response happens when your brain receives more input than it can handle. It defaults to inaction. That's not cowardice, it's processing overload. You also miss opportunities. You watch a fight later and see obvious openings the fighter ignored. That fighter didn't recognize the opening in time to exploit it. Your perceptual field narrows under stress. You focus on the immediate threat, the punch coming at your face, and miss the setup movements, the environmental cues, the secondary attack. You become predictable. When processing fails, you default to your most ingrained response, regardless of whether it fits the situation. An experienced opponent reads your patterns and counters them. These aren't technique failures. They're processing failures. Look at how most martial arts training works. You drill specific techniques for specific attacks. Your partner throws a punch, you block. They kick, you evade. You train with cooperative partners who attack in expected ways. You practice in ideal conditions. No stress, no chaos, no real consequences. This reinforces rigid thinking. Your brain learns to expect one attack at a time, delivered in a predictable pattern. When you face a real confrontation, the input doesn't match your training. Your brain tries to apply the drilled response, but the situation doesn't fit. The result is confusion and delay. You have beautiful techniques that work perfectly in the dojo but break down under the processing demands of real combat. The problem isn't your technique, it's your training method. At Modern Combat Martial Arts, we teach the White Lotus system, which addresses processing vulnerabilities directly. You train your brain to handle multiple data streams simultaneously. You process distance, timing, technique, and intention as integrated elements, not separate problems. We compress the time between observation and action through specific training methodologies. You learn to recognize patterns and threats faster, giving you more time to respond. We introduce complexity and stress gradually. Stress inoculation. Your brain builds processing capacity the same way athletes build physical capacity. You learn to recognize combat patterns and principles rather than memorizing isolated techniques. This reduces cognitive load because you work with concepts, not thousands of individual responses. You develop enhanced situational awareness, faster pattern recognition, and adaptive decision-making. Processing speed depends on physical mastery. You can't think your way through a fight if your body doesn't know the mechanics. At Modern Combat Martial Arts, or MCMA, we build your mechanical foundation through basic skill development. You drill the fundamental movements until they become automatic. This frees your conscious mind to focus on intake and decision-making. When your body knows the technique without conscious thought, you close the gap between observation and action. You don't waste mental resources on execution. You see the attack, you recognize the pattern, and your body responds. The processing gap shrinks. You maintain clarity under pressure because your physical platform supports your mental processing. Technique and processing work together. One without the other leaves you vulnerable. Train your processing as hard as your techniques. Close the gap between seeing and doing. That's how you respond when it matters most.